Hey guys, welcome in this new weekly review. I hope that all of you are doing great. So last trading week was okay for me. I took 5 trades. 2 of them were break-even, 1 of them was a 0.5% loss, and the 2 other trades I am still in those trades. 1 of them is in a nice profit and the other one is around break-even. So overall, on paper I took a 0.5% loss, but I have other trades that are going well. So that's why I said that overall, it was a regular trading week. So let's get right into it as usual. So let's start with the dollar index. So dollar index, if we look at the structure that is happening right now, first of all, you guys remember last week that I was talking about the fact that this could either make a correction around those levels and then upside, or make a reversal. So at this point, well, we don't really know which one of those 2 possibilities, because what we have is an impulse, we have a correction, and we have an impulse, right? So at this point, well, we could go both ways. So the first possibility is that this is making some type of correction, just like it did right here, right? Something very similar. And we make one more high, which I think honestly is the most likely possibility. Also, we have some divergence here on the MACD, so that's interesting to notice. But overall, I think that we might move higher. That's the first possibility. The other possibility is that, well, we could just make a flag here, push lower and continue like this, and in the end this could lead to a reversal. Just because the correction is really deep right here, it doesn't mean that it cannot reverse, right? Like, that's important to understand. But overall, that is basically what I'm looking for the dollar index. So if this is a correction, we could make one more high, which, as I said, personally, that's just my opinion, but I think that this is more likely to happen, but it could also reverse, as I said. So at this point, well, I am just waiting to see if we get a correction for downside or if we get a reversal for upside. If we get the downside right now, well, it could be the long-term reversal that I've been expecting for a long time. That's the first possibility. And after that, if we get a upside right here and we come and once again break the top, well, we will just repeat the process of this break right here, right? You remember that when we broke here, I said it could either correct and go more upside or reverse. Well, it will be the same thing here. So if we break the top, I will say we will need to either correct for more upside or reverse for downside. So exactly the same thing that could repeat right here. Those are the main possibilities I'm looking for on the dollar index. Euro USD, we got a lot of volatility, as you can see last week, because of the rate for the euro, the conference that we got, and things like that. So we got nice volatility on euro last week. So at this point, I am being very careful with euro USD because I could see 2 possibilities on the short term. So if we drop now on the 1 hour, well, the first possibility is that this is a 1, 2, 3 correction, and we could continue the downside. That's the first possibility. The second possibility is that this could be an impulse. We could be getting a huge correction and we could eventually move higher. So what is going to tell us which of those directions will happen? Well, it depends on what we get right now. If we start to make a bigger correction here, well, I think that this will show us more upside, because this could be a correction for upside after this impulse, right? If not, if we make a small flag here, I would not be surprised to see this come back down and eventually retest those levels. So that is what I'm looking for on Euro USD. Now, if we go on the higher time frame and we look at what we got in the previous months, well, you can see that we have been going down very, very slowly, right? Like it's not really aggressive, it's a slow down move, but it is still a downtrend, right? And that's important to understand because we are still in a huge daily downtrend. So in terms of probabilities, do you think that you have the more probability for the upside or for the downside at this point? Well, personally, I think that the downside is more probable simply because we are still in this huge correction. Now, when I say downside is more probable, I'm talking about the short term, right? As I showed you guys before, within this little structure. Of course, the long term, I still have the same forecast. I think that we could see more upside on the long term. But for the short term, right, for trading purposes for this week, for example, well, I think that there's more probability for the downside, simply because we have been going down for a very long time. So, you know, if we look at past history of the chart, and you try to either sell within this move or buy within this move, which one of those two directions you are more likely to get a good trade? Well, of course it will be the sell, right? Because it's still going down. So that's why I said that in terms of probabilities, I think that the downside would be more interesting, but the upside is also a possibility. So you have to keep a open mind to be able to see both scenarios. But overall, this is what I'm looking for on Euro USD, either one more down or correction and upside already. GBP USD did exactly what we said last week, moved higher. So I took a break-even trade on GBP USD, and I am not in this trade sadly because it's going pretty well, but the trade that I took was the breakout of this correction right here. So I took the trade somewhere there, I took a buy right here, and I closed the trade somewhere within this move right here. I don't remember exactly where, but the reason why did I close the trade is because normally when the market makes a correction and break, well, it should not wait and, you know, play around those levels that long before it take off. I mean, it should already have taken off by now. So when I saw this like other correction in the making, I just decided to remove my trade. So this is what happened. We got a bigger correction and we eventually moved higher. Now, the small mistake that I made was to not get back into the trade right here, because you can see that we got a nice correction, impulse, small flag. So when we broke the flag, this could have been a very nice entry order, but I just missed this trade, unfortunately. So that is basically what happened with the GBP USD. So for the long term, exactly the same forecast as last week, right? We have an impulse, we have 1, 2, 3. I'm still expecting this to move higher. Now, it might not be a really aggressive move, simply because if you look at the first wave, well, you see that there's a lot of up and down within this move. So we might be repeating something like this here eventually. That's one thing that you have to be careful of. But at the same time, on GBP USD, as we saw in the last few months, and as we saw before, well, sometimes it moves very, very fast without making a bigger correction for a very long time, right? So because of this possibility, well, I am interested in taking any buy for the next correction. So it doesn't really matter if it's a small correction or if it's a big correction. Both could be good. Of course, a bigger correction is always, you know, better because, well, you get a bigger structure, so you have a better chance of seeing a nice impulse after that. But even a small correction could do the job. So basically, at this point, all I'm waiting for is another opportunity to get in the trade. So if we get a bigger correction, well, good for me because I have a better trade setup for the upside. If not, if we just make a small flag here, well, I still think that this could be enough to move the market quite a lot and make a nice up move after that. So that is basically what I'm looking for on GBP USD. Not really complex. I'm just looking for the next correction to get involved in the upside that I think we are already starting right now on the pound pairs. So that's basically the idea with this trade. AUD USD, still around those levels as we were last week. Nothing changed on this one, right? Exactly the same structure. This is not confirming upside and this is not confirming downside neither. So what I'm waiting for is, first of all, I think we will break eventually this structure, right? As you can see, we're kind of making a channel here at the top. And when we will break, well, I will wait to see if this is a reversal for the downside or if we make a bigger correction for upside. So at this point, I'm just waiting to see how the next piece here will develop, and that will tell me basically if we get upside or downside after that. But for now, I am just waiting for a breakout of this structure right here that we can clearly see. And after that, well, we will see, you know, what we get after the break of the structure, and this will tell us basically the next piece on the long term that we will get. But for now, I am just waiting. This will probably take a few days to happen, or even the whole week, and by next week we will have a better idea which direction it could go on the long term. NZD USD, so I am in this trade, I am in a sell. So last week, if you guys remember, what I was looking for was a bigger correction and the continuation to the upside or a reversal. We basically got a little bit of the two scenario, which could be confusing for some people. But what happened, I think, is that we got this correction here, small breakout, and then right here, this is where it reversed to the downside. And you know, those moves are not like impossible to happen, right? Like look at this one here, right? Impulse, correction, slightly break, and go back down after that. So impulse, correction, slightly break, and go down after that. That is what I'm expecting here to happen. So that's my main forecast. I think that this is likely going to retest those levels. This is looking very much like a big correction right here. If I'm wrong about this, the other possibility could be that this is a big expanding flat in the making and that we start the upside. Now, I don't think that it's doing that because this is already, like this went relatively deep, you know, for this to be an expanding flat. Like it's still possible, right? It still exists as a possibility, but it's not the most probable one. I think what is more probable is that this continues the downside and eventually reach those levels. And it's basically the same thing as Euro USD, right? Like if you look at it on the daily, well, we have been trending down for a very, very long time. Now, if you look at a structure like this, on the long term, of course, as I said, I'm expecting upside. Like even if we break this level, I don't care. I still think it will come back up after that. So this does not change. But while we are in this downtrend, well, what's the highest probability, right? Is it buying or is it selling? Well, of course, it's selling because it keeps going down and down, right? We keeps making new low. So could we make another low here before an upside? I think so, right? So that's what you need to keep in mind as well. Even if we are already low within this down move, well, it could just keep going down. That's important to keep in mind. But for this week, as I said, not really complex, I think. Either expanding flat here for upside or more downside here to retest those levels. So now if we drop on the 1 hour, I will show you guys where did I take the trade. So we got a nice impulse, we got a nice correction here. I didn't take the trade as soon as we broke out of the correction because I was expecting, you know, a possibility of the expanding flat as I said. So I waited a little bit, and after that, as you guys can see, we got a very small 15-minute flag right here. And when we broke out of this flag during the retail sell news event that we got on Friday, I decided to jump in the trade right around here. So I'm in this trade right now. As you can see, it's pretty much at break even. But I am in this sell right now, and my risk is calculated with those levels. That's basically what I decided to do last week. And even if I got in a little late, well, I still have a very nice risk to reward ratio, as you guys can see. So that's basically the idea with this trade. As I said, now I think we can make a correction here, continue lower, and you know, eventually just reach the low. Or if I'm wrong, well, this could reverse, make a correction here, and I will just get out of the trade for the upside after that. So that's basically what I'm looking for on NZD/USD for this upcoming week. USD CAD is also a trade that I took on Friday. This trade is already in a nice profit. So basically, if you guys remember on last week's forecast, we were around those levels. I said this could either retest those levels or make an expanding flat and make one more high here to make a big 1, 2, 3. I think that this is what we're doing right now. As you guys can see, we already got a pretty nice and big up move right here. I think it will just continue like that. Now, the one thing you have to be really careful here is that if you look at the first wave, well, we got 1, 2, 3, and 4 relatively big correction within this move. In the wave that we're making right now, we only have 1. So could we start a bigger correction eventually and, you know, make a upside that looks a little slow like this, right? But eventually still reach, you know, the target? I think so, right? So you have to be extremely careful because of that reason. This might move more upside, and that's what I think will happen, but it could be a relatively slow impulse, right? It doesn't have to be really aggressive. It could be slow. And because of that, you need to manage your trade and to be aware of this possibility, right? You need to manage your trade according to that possibility as well. So if we drop on the 1 hour, not really complex of a trade. We got a nice correction here. We broke out, we made a small flag. When we broke the flag, I decided to take the trade right here. My entry is more around here. I got in a little late, but that's the same trade, right? I did calculate my risk with this level right here. I could have decided to go with the low of the flag, but I wanted to give some more room for the trade to develop because of the possibility that I just showed you guys on the higher time frame. And so my risk is calculated with those levels. So as you can see, the trade is already in a pretty nice profit, and I'm looking for more upside at this point on USD CAD. So we might make just a small flag, continue. It might just do this, right? It might be aggressive, like that's possible as well. But the most probable scenario is that we make, big correction within the move, but eventually still go. So that's why I said that, you need to manage that type of position carefully if you know that the first wave looks like this. The second one could also be relatively so. So that's important to keep in mind, but overall that's what I'm looking for on USD CAD for this week. USD CHF, as I said last week, I'm not really interested in this. One possibility that I see is that this might be a big correction, right? Like we have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So this might be all of that a huge correction, and we might start to move lower to eventually come back to those levels. But for now, it's not moving really nice. If we jump on the 1 hour, there is a possibility of like a expanding flat right here, right? So we might move lower, but I don't want to take any sell right now because this could just make a correction here as well for more upside. So at this point, I am just waiting for a better scenario. So the best scenario for me would be a breakout and then a small flag around here. If we get this, then I'm interested in the sell. If we don't get that, I'm not looking for the trade and I will just wait for another opportunity. So that's basically the idea with this trade. Overall, it could either make a big correction here for upside or reverse, but if it does reverse, I want to wait for a nice correction here before getting in the trade. Otherwise, I would not be interested because, as I said in the last weekly review, there's a lot of up and down within this down move. It doesn't look quite sharp and it doesn't look really nice. So that's why I said that, overall, I'm just waiting to see how this will develop. If I get a good sell, I will take it. If not, I will just wait. USD yen, not really complex, doing what we said it could do. We have 1, we have 2, we have 3, right? Same forecast as the last few months, nothing changed here. If we go in the 4 hour, we have an impulse, we have a correction, we have a big impulse. So eventually, I would not be surprised to see a bigger correction starting just to confirm more upside. But, it could just keep going up like this very, very strong for quite some time. But overall, it is still the same thing. Just at this point, what I am expecting would be eventually a bigger correction, but the long-term forecast is exactly the same. Euro AUD, this is an interesting spot right now because as you can see, we got a nice downside here and now we got a nice impulse. And if we go in the 1 hour, we might be making either the start of a bigger correction here, or this might be trying to go back down. So on the higher time frame, what I'm looking for is 2 possibilities. If this is a big correction, which it could be, right? This could be a huge 1, 2, 3 with a very long third wave. It's not impossible. So if this is a big correction, then I think we have an impulse. And if we get a flag here, we might come back up and retest those levels. That's the first possibility. If not, if this is the top of the structure and we are reversing on the higher time frame, then what I think could happen is we get a bigger correction here. And if we get this, then I am looking for the sell. So both directions could be very interesting. And so at this point, I am just waiting to see which one of those 2 possibilities will develop on Euro AUD. But overall, this is what I'm looking for. Euro yen, we made a huge expanding flat here, as you guys can see. We have an impulse, we have a correction, we have an impulse. So on Euro yen, I'm not necessarily expecting a bigger correction, just like the other yen pair, because we already have a big correction here. So if we get a small flag here, well, I think that we could continue moving up like this for quite some time. The long-term forecast is still exactly the same, right? We have 1, we have 2. I am still expecting a 3 here eventually. Well, I think that we are starting this up wave right now, and that is what I'm looking for. So if we get more correction, I think we could continue the upside. Not really more complex than that for this week. I think on Euro yen, that's the only type of trade I could be interested in. If not, I will wait to see how the market develops. Euro NZD. I was forgetting something, and I just, because I also have some notes right here on my other screen, so I was forgetting something. But as I said, I took a 0.5% loss this week, and that's on euro yen. So I will show you guys this loss. So what I was looking for initially with this trade, if we remove those lines, was a 1, 2, 3 reverse around those level, right? And we got an impulse, we got a small flag. So when we broke out here during the news, I decided to take a trade here, a buy, with a risk calculated to those levels. And what happened is that when we started to go back down, already when the news got released and broke the low of the flag, I just decided to get out of the trade with a 0.5% loss. So that's basically what happened with the euro yen trade, but overall that is just a small loss, as I said. So that's the trade. I'm just looking to see if I don't forget anything. Yeah, okay, so that's good. So that was a 0.5% loss, as I said. That's the only not break-even trade for last week. Euro and ZD, I took a break-even trade on this one. I took a break-even trade on this one. I wrote GBP and ZD, but that's wrong. That's just my mistake. It's Euro and ZD. So I will show you guys this trade. So what I was looking for, well, not really complex, right? We had an impulse, we had a nice correction, and as you guys know, I'm looking for a long-term downside, and I thought that this was the beginning of the long-term downside. Just to remind you guys of what I'm looking for, I think it's pretty easy to see. We have an impulse, we have a correction, I'm looking for one more down here. And I thought that we were starting this one more down, and that is the reason why I took the trade. So on the 1 hour, I took the trade right here. So you see we got a nice correction, we got a nice breakout, small flag here. When we broke out of the flag, I took the sell right around those levels. I kept the trade even during the news, we got a nice downside, but after that, after getting the huge downside here, as you guys can see, it started to reverse pretty strongly. It even broke those levels right here, as you guys can see. But after that, let me just remove this line. So after that, after breaking this level here, you guys can see that it came back down, and that's when I got out of the trade here at the break-even. So overall, that was a break-even trade, as I said, and the reason why I got out of the trade is because I didn't want this level here of this correction to be broken, because that tells me that we are going more upside after that, and this is exactly what happened, as you guys can see right now, right? So overall, now how I am looking at this structure, well, not really complex. If we go back on the 4 hour, I think that this is making an expanding flat right here. So if we get a correction here, well, we might make one more high right here and then the downside. But I would not be surprised that we move higher before that, before we get the downside with the next expanding flat in the middle right here. So that's how I'm looking at the structure for now. If we get a flag, I think we could likely move higher. Euro GBP continuing the downside, that's because of the GBP, right? All the GBP pairs moved pretty strongly on Friday. So continuing the downside, I could have taken a trade right here, right, with a risk to this level, but I decided to wait, and what I'm waiting for is just a small flag around those levels, right? Just to confirm more downside. I don't really like selling it here. We have some divergence, we are close to the oversold right here. This move is not really aggressive for now. We got a lot of big correction already, so that's not really like that good of a setup for me, even if it could move lower, right? I mean, we might even come back to these levels, as I said in the other weekly reviews, but I want to see a better setup. So if I get a small flag, then I will be interested for the downside. If not, I will just wait for the next opportunity. Okay, GBP AUD. I think it's a pretty clear setup as well. Probably 1, 2, 3 reverse, impulse, contracting flat, and I think we could continue moving higher to at least break those levels. And from here, we will see if we are making a big correction for downside, or if that is a total reversal back to the highs right here. Those are the two main possibilities I'm looking for. But overall, this might be a good short-term buy setup back to this level, as I said. The other possibility that I see, this might be a correction in itself, and we might make one more low here, right? Making something like this before moving higher, but I don't think it's the main scenario. I think the main scenario is upside already. So on the 1 hour, we had a nice buy setup right here. We had another one right here. Now what I'm waiting for is either a bigger correction and then the upside, or another possibility as well. I think that this might just come back down here, making this the bigger correction and move higher after that. So that's basically what I'm looking for. I don't want to buy it here, but if we get, you know, some more downside here and then the upside, after that it could be a good trade. But for now, I'm just waiting to see how this whole piece will develop right here. GBP, CHF, same thing, moving higher, right? We're getting big corrections with this one, this one, this one, this one. Moving higher, the long-term forecast is still the same. This could either be making a huge correction here, that's the first possibility, or this might be something like a 1, 2, 3 here, and we might make one more high on the long term here. So overall, same thing, nothing really changed. At this point, I am just waiting for a bigger correction. We have this impulse here in the making. So I would like to see, you know, and this might move higher before it breaks, but eventually I would like to see a bigger correction, which confirms long-term upside. So that's basically the idea. All the pound pairs, as I said, are going in the same direction. This one is not really my favorite because it's the CHF one, and as I showed you guys on USD CHF, I don't really like how the CHF is moving right now. Like there's a lot of big correction and things like that. So that's not my favorite GBP pair, but I mean, if all the GBP pairs go in the same direction, this one will probably follow as well. GBP yen on the other end, sorry. This is looking very interesting, doing what we said last week, right? We were around here. I said it could likely continue the upside. This is what we're getting. Higher time frame, same thing as the previous months, as I said. We have 1, we have 2, we're coming back up for H3 right here. So the upside potential is still very big on this one, even though we already got a big upside right here. So the upside potential is still, you know, a pretty nice one. So now if we go on the 4 hour, I am waiting for another correction. Now this correction doesn't have to be necessarily like a big correction, because if we look at, for example, the down move right here, well, you see that, you know, we got a very, very strong 2 impulses right here with, you know, bigger corrections in the middle, but like they were still very small correction. Like those are not like huge correction, you know. So I'm not expecting necessarily a big correction. So if we get like even a small flag here, this could be a good trade for the upside. Of course, as I said on GBP USD, a bigger correction would be the best scenario, but it might not do that, right? Like we might just get a flag upside, and eventually right here, like make a bigger correction, you know, but it might take some time before we get this bigger correction. So at this point, if I get a good correction on GBP yen, this could be a good trade for the upside. GBP CAD, same thing as all the other GBP pair, right? We might be looking at a 1, 2, 3 right here. So this might come back higher, you know, for the long term, just like the other GBP pair, as I said, or this might just be making a correction here. That's also a possibility. Those are different ways it could develop. If we look at it on the 4 hour, well, same thing as all the other GBP pairs, right? If we get a correction, we might move higher. Now, the only thing I don't like with GBP CAD is this correction right here, because I think that we might make a down move like this before moving higher. And that's possible because if USD CAD make a, you know, a deep correction, as I showed you guys at the beginning of the video, then this one might also make a deeper correction before upside. That's a possibility. If not, well, just like the other GBP pairs, it could just make a correction and move higher and higher. So that's another possibility. Not my favorite personally GBP pair, but I mean, it could still be a good trade. GBP and NZD, kind of the same situation. It could move higher, but that's not really my favorite pair. The reason why I don't like this one as much is because there are so many different possibilities with this pattern right here that it becomes really hard to trade it. So just to show you guys a few possibilities, this could be a contracting flat and we could make one more high right now. That's possible. This could be making a big 1, 2, 3, one more down and then the upside. or we might be making a bigger 1, 2, 3 here, then one more up, making this the second wave, then one more down, and then the upside. Or this might be making a triangle, like, you see what I mean, right? Like, there's a lot of different ways it could develop. So I think that this one is not the best one to trade as well. But I mean, it's like, if the setup is there, it could still be a good trade. Mainly, I'm looking for upside because of all the other GBP pairs and what they are showing us. So if we get a nice correction, we might move higher, but I think you have to be careful on this one as well. NZD CAD, same thing as last week. We're just making, correction here. We have 1, we have 2, probably one more up here, and from there we will see if that is a reversal or if that is just a correction for downside. So I'm waiting to see how this piece will develop. For now, I'm not interested in any trade, but if we get a correction here for downside, then I think it could become a good opportunity. But at this point, I am just waiting to see how it will develop. AUDM, I'm still in this trade from these levels, so going very, very well. As you guys know, I also had another buy from a very long time now around those levels. So same thing as the other yen pair, right? We have 1, we have 2, I'm still expecting a 3 right here. At this point, we might make a bigger correction, right? Just like some of the other yen pair. So I would not be surprised to start see something like this here. But eventually, I think it will just continue moving higher, even if we make a bigger correction. So overall, same thing. The forecast, the long-term forecast is still the same. I think we could likely move higher, but before that, we might just make a bigger correction. AUD and ZD, we finally broke the top, as you guys can see. So at this point, it's really important to be careful because this could be a correction for downside, or we could make more upside right here. So what I am waiting for to see which direction, well, very simple. If we get a reversal, I'm looking for downside. If we get a bigger correction, I'm looking for upside. Bitcoin, same thing as the previous week. I feel like I'm always repeating myself since the beginning of summer, but that's the same thing as last week, right? We have maybe this little flag that could push a little higher, but overall, this is still looking like a very incomplete pattern. So I would not be surprised, even if this pushed higher, that we eventually make at least one more low right here to complete a bigger correction. So overall, I think that Bitcoin, we are still in this big correction and we might stay around those levels for quite some time. Same thing for Ripple. This could either be a correction in the making right here for one more low, or this might be trying to reverse. What is hard with that type of trading is that when it reverses, it goes very, very fast, right? So look at this one, look at this one, look at this one, look at this one. So when it goes up very, very aggressively, right? So that's why this one can be hard to trade, because if you're not in the trade and it goes up, well, you are more likely just to miss the whole move, But overall, at the same time, you have to be careful because of more downside possibility, as I just showed you guys. But that's basically the same thing as last week, as I said, right? Like last week we were like right here and we're still right here. So nothing changed on this one since last week, exactly the same forecast. Gold, gold is at an interesting level. This might be making some type of correction here for more upside. That's the first possibility. But as you guys can see, if we go the 4 hour, we came back down, we made an attempt to the upside, but it's not really going, right? Like we're coming back down very strongly. So what that tells me is that we might start a bigger correction. The last big correction that we got was this one here. So I would not be surprised to get, a bigger correction around those levels if we are to move higher. Could this be a reversal? Could this be like a correction for a long-term downside? Honestly, I do not think so. It's not impossible, right? If you look at it on the weekly, we have an impulse, we have 1, 2, 3. So this might reverse right now, but I think it's unlikely because of the possible recession in the US that could happen eventually. Well, usually when there is a financial crisis or a recession, things like gold tend to go up because people put their money into gold, as a, to basically protect their money. Like that's a very common belief that most people have. And so that's what happened. Like during the recession periods and things like that, right? If we look back at 2008, for example, which was the last big financial crisis, well, look at what happened with gold during that time, right? It shoot right to the upside. So that's why I said that, like, I think it's unlikely that we move lower, you know, on the long term, but it's possible as well. So you have to keep those things in mind. And what I think is more probable to happen is just that we make a bigger correction and then continue the upside. USD ENR coming back down a little here. So same thing as last week. This might just be starting a bigger correction for upside. That's what I think is going to happen. Could this be a reversal for downside? Possible. I mean, you know, it's not really probable, I think, but it's possible. So you have to keep an eye for more downside possibility right here as well. But overall, I think it could just make a correction for upside after that. Euro ENR still looking very good for upside. We have 1, 2, 3 right here, so we might make one more high. The only thing you have to be careful is what happens when we break this level, because when we get there, well, two things could happen. This could either be a reversal for total upside, or this might be 1, 2, 3 for more downside. Those are the main possibilities, and that is why you have to be careful with Euro ENR. But overall, for this week, we might get some more upside. As you guys can see, it is looking pretty good. We have a nice impulse, a nice correction, impulse, and now we are maybe trying to reverse back, as I said, to this level. GBP ENR looking pretty good as well for upside, right? You see that we're getting some type of correction right here, so we might move higher like this. I'm expecting a move similar to this one, and as you can see with this move, well, we have 1, 2, 3. And with this one, we are making 1, 2, 3 right now. So overall, this is looking like a pretty good setup. I think we could move higher in the next few weeks to basically complete whatever pattern we are probably making around those levels. That's what I'm looking for. So I think that we might see some more upside for the upcoming weeks on the GBP ENR. Japanese yen, Indian rupee, I think this one you have to be careful because we might be trying to reverse. So there's two possibilities with this one. This might be starting a bigger correction. That's the first possibility. But the most probable possibility is not this one, because we already got like big correction right here and right here. So if this was to move higher, I don't think we would make a bigger correction once again. I mean, it's possible, right? Like we might just make a correction like this here, one more high, and we might repeat this, you know, even more. Like it might do this, right? Like it's possible. But what I think is more probable, if we look at it on the weekly, well, we have an impulse, we have 1, we have 2. We might be coming back down right here for a third wave to complete a bigger correction. And if we think that all the other yen pairs could be making a big move to the upside, well, this one, since the yen is the first currency, it could make a big move to the downside, right? So this could actually be an interesting setup because of all the other yen pairs that are also showing us a big move on the higher time frame. So that's what I'm mainly looking for. So on the lower time frame, well, if we get a nice correction here, it might start the downside. If not, we might just get something like this and move higher after that. So that is basically it for this week, guys. I hope that you enjoyed the video as always. And yeah, so on that, take care, trade with care, manage money well, and I will see you in my next video. Bye bye.